Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In this session, we are going to look at how we can level or profile resources. And this is an extremely important function which a scheduling engineer has to do on a project. And let us take a look at some of the basic requirements and what happens when we try to level resources. So the topics for today are given in the slide. We will first look at basically what are the requirements to level resources on a project. And then we will look at different kinds of resource profiles and the simplification required, go to different leveling approaches, and we'll spend some time with a very simplistic approach called the minimum moment algorithm, and then work a few examples to show how the minimum moment algorithm can be applied. Now, when we take a look at resource profile, I think from the earlier lectures, you all should be familiar with what we are doing the resource histogram. So here we have 4 histograms of different shape, and what we have on the x-axis here is of course the time, and this has been the level of resources that are going to be deployed. So if we say, let's say 1 to 12 is 12 months of the year for a given year, and we take these 4 histograms. Now, what is the requirement? What do we think a project would want? So this is a key question, and if you take a look at the 4, you might come out with an answer of 1, 2, 3 or 4, but actually if you get onto a project, you might find that any of these could be applicable to a particular project. Okay, so if you take, for example, the first one is a perfectly leveled resource. This would what we call an ideal case. We might like to have this in a project. Of course, it's ideal, but hey, if you want something ideal, this is what we could probably try to aim. And in the rest of the lecture, we'll say that this is what we want to aim for in kind of a theoretical profile. So if you take the second profile, okay, which is kind of going this way, where in the beginning of the project, we don't have that much load of resources. As the project progresses, we significantly increase, and as the project decreases, we reduce the resources on the project. So in many projects, this is considered to be what is required. That is a steady increase and then a decrease. And this, from mobilization point of view, during the beginning you cannot easily mobilize things, but as you go on, you might find that the project pace picks up, and then as the projects get to closure, it slowly starts down. And this is also an acceptable profile. In many cases, sometimes a practical profile of what a project manager would want to do. Now we come to another case here, okay, where we are now having a profile which is kind of varying, and we might say, oh, is this something which we want to do? Now, if you kind of take weather into account, and when I can actually do construction and when I can't do construction, might be such a profile will suit my climatic conditions. So here we would say that probably January, February, in this region I might not be able to do that much work, whereas coming into March and April I'm mobilizing more people to do more work. Coming into summer I might do less, monsoon even less, and then in August, September, October I might try to do maximum and then taper down again towards the end of the year. So the point of bringing this up is to say that look, now the weather condition is different in the southern hemisphere. They might follow a different pattern. If it is far north, it might be a different pattern. So in many ways, a resource profile can really be based on what the project requires. So while this is an ideal profile, something like this is also something which might be is optimal for a project. So we have to kind of understand what the project requirements are and then choose a profile. Now you might find that the fourth profile which you have shown here, where the resources rise, then it kind of peaks towards the end and then the project completes, might be this is what happens on many of our projects. where things don't become clear, scope changes, all these issues take place, and then it's only towards the end that most of the work gets done. This is not an ideal profile. It causes a lot of problems, but might be this is how things are going to work out for a particular project where design is changing and things are are all kind of fluid till the end. So the point of the slide is to say that when you look at a practical project, there can be various profiles which are optimal for the project. And while we will probably narrow in on this as our kind of a theoretical profile with what we want to work with, any of these other profiles are possible, and it is quite challenging to actually fit your resource plan to a profile which would be suitable for the project. Okay, and one thing we want to say, when we are going towards the ideal profile which is rectangular, if you don't try to profile your resources, you might land up with what we are showing here as a random profile. And if my resources are going to do this, and then this is going to be extremely difficult to manage, and you certainly don't want this. And in comparison with something like this, this is something which we would want to try to achieve. So in the context of what we are kind of going to cover, we are going to try to move our either early start or a profile between early start and late start to get as close to what we are calling the ideal profile here as possible. So you may recall we did this a couple of lectures back when we looked at one of the reasons for leveling was to look at over allocation. So here we had over allocated resources, okay, here, and we then wanted to move this over allocated resources to this area where there was still room to take in more resources, and as a result of that, we got a perfectly level, theoretical but perfectly level profile which resolved the over allocation problem also. So when we are talking about resource leveling, we are talking about leveling profiles like this, not necessarily with respect to over allocation, but just the fact that I have variations going on in each place and I cannot handle variations. I would like it to be, in fact, this is not as desirable as this is. Even though there is a variation, it is a smooth variation. Having random variations like this is not what we would want on a project. So we are trying to take it from this profile here, which is random, to ideal. And beyond that, we have to see whether if this resolves over allocation issues, that is also beneficial to us.